How much energy do you spend every day trying to control the outcome of things? Managing, planning, worrying, pushing, forcing. What if there was a completely different way to move through life? Not passive, not giving up, but genuinely trusting something larger than yourself to carry what you can't carry. A philosopher named Alan Watts spent his life pointing at exactly that, and the way he described it may change how you approach your day. Let's go deeper. Welcome to Ascend and Awaken. Alan Watts was born in 1915 in a small English town outside London, the only child of a Michelin tire salesman and a schoolteacher. From childhood, something in him leaned east. He was drawn to Oriental art, to Eastern philosophy, to the suggestion that reality might be fundamentally different from what Western civilization had always assumed. He never attended university, failed to win an Oxford scholarship because his entrance essay was written in the style of Nietzsche, which apparently did not impress the evaluators. He taught himself instead. By 21, he had published his first book on Zen. By 23, he had moved to the United States, married, enrolled in an Episcopal theological seminary, earned a master's degree in theology, and was ordained a Christian priest. He served as a university chaplain for 6 years, weaving Christian mysticism and Eastern philosophy together in ways that were genuinely unusual for the 1940s. Then he left the priesthood, left his first marriage, left the institution, and moved to San Francisco, where he began broadcasting weekly on a community radio station in Berkeley, translating Taoism, Zen, Vedanta into plain English in a way no one else was doing. His voice, warm, unhurried, laced with a gentle wit, found its audience immediately. Here's where honesty requires a pause. Watts was not a guru. He never claimed to be. He called himself a philosophical entertainer and a rascal, and meant both. He married 3 times, had 7 children, most of whom he was not present for in the ways that mattered. By the end of his life, the man who spoke so eloquently about trusting the flow of things was drinking nearly a bottle of vodka a day. He died in 1973 in his cabin in the hills north of San Francisco at 58 years old. His daughter Anne had said the work stands on its own. Shunryu Suzuki, one of the great Zen masters of the 20th century, when a student dismissed Watts as inauthentic, replied with quiet intensity, "You completely missed the point about Alan Watts. He is a great bodhisattva. The teaching and the teacher are 2 different things. Both deserve to be seen clearly." Beneath all the Zen koans and Taoist paradoxes and brilliant radio talks, Watts was really asking one question over and over again in different forms. What if you stopped fighting reality? Not surrender to it in defeat, not give up and become passive, but genuinely stop fighting the nature of things. Stop treating existence as a problem to be solved and started treating it as a river to be navigated. He put it this way: the art of life is more like navigation than warfare. For what is important is to understand the winds, the tides, the currents, the seasons, and the principles of growth and decay, so that one's actions may use them and not fight them. Navigation, not warfare, not forcing, not fighting, not gripping. Reading the currents, understanding the season, and moving with what is already in motion. This is what the ancient Chinese call Wu Wei. Watts described Wu Wei as one of the most misunderstood concepts he ever tried to translate for Western audiences. Most people hear not forcing and assume it means doing nothing. Passivity, letting things collapse around you while you sit and watch. That's not it. Watts said, Wu Wei is the art of sailing rather than the art of rowing. A sailor doesn't fight the wind. A sailor reads the wind, understands it, respects it, works with it. The sail is not passive. It is precisely and intelligently responsive to what is already there. And elsewhere he wrote, Wu Wei means always acting in accord with the pattern of things as they exist. We never force a lock because we will bend the key or break the lock. Instead, we jiggle it until it turns. Jiggle it until it turns. That image is so simple and so practical, it almost sounds too ordinary for a spiritual teaching. But that is exactly what makes it radical. How much of what we call effort in relationships, in work, in our own inner lives is really forcing the lock, bending the key, rowing against a wind that was never our enemy. Watts had a gift for finding the image that made the abstract land in the body. Untrust on what it actually means to stop fighting and start flowing. He said, to have faith is to trust yourself to the water. When you swim, you don't grab hold of the water, because if you do, you will sink and drown. Instead, you relax and float. Trust yourself to the water. Not trust that the water will be warm, not trust that there won't be currents or difficulties. Trust that the water itself will hold you, that the nature of things, when you stop fighting it, has a kind of intelligence that carrying you is part of. This is not naive optimism. What Watts was pointing at was the recognition that your resistance to what is costs more than what is itself, that the fighting exhausts you in ways the difficulty never would have on its own. He said, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Underneath the Wu Wei teaching is something even more fundamental, a shift in how Watts understood the relationship between a human being and the universe they inhabit. Most of us move through life feeling like a separate self inside a body, inside a world, as if we're visitors here, tourists in a universe that doesn't particularly know or care whether we're here or not. Watts said that picture is simply wrong. You didn't come into this world. You came out of it, like a wave from the ocean. He also said, through our eyes, the universe is perceiving itself. Through our ears, the universe is listening to its harmonies. We are the witnesses through which the universe becomes conscious of its glory, of its magnificence. If this is true, if you are not a visitor to the universe, but an expression of it, the way a wave is an expression of the ocean, then trusting the universe is not an act of faith directed outward towards something separate from you. It is an act of trust directed inward, toward what you already are. The wave does not need to trust the ocean. It is the ocean, temporarily taking this particular form. Watts arrived at this from Taoism and Zen. Other mystics who have appeared on this channel arrived at the same place from a different direction. Brother Lawrence, the 17th century monk who practiced the presence of God in a monastery kitchen, described his entire spiritual practice as a simple, continuous returning of attention to the divine. Not forcing, not achieving, just returning again and again to what was already present. Jean-Pierre de Caussade, an 18th century French Jesuit priest, largely unknown today, but whose writing speaks with remarkable clarity across the centuries, called this abandonment to divine providence. He wrote simply, abandon yourself entirely to the order of providence. Not a technique, a stance, a continuous releasing of the grip on how you think things ought to go. Different centuries, different traditions, different vocabularies, the same pointing. Stop fighting what is, trust what carries you, go with the grain. This is not an abstract teaching. Watts was too practical for abstraction without application. It means that the situation you are currently most resistant to, the relationship that isn't going the way you planned, the career shift that isn't moving fast enough, the inner life that feels stuck, may be asking for navigation rather than warfare. Not giving up, not pretending it doesn't matter, reading the current, finding where the grain runs, jiggling the lock instead of forcing it. Watts put it plainly. Things are as they are. Looking out into the universe at night, we make no comparisons between right and wrong stars, nor between well and badly arranged constellations. The stars are not in the wrong place. The constellation is not badly arranged. It is simply what it is. And the energy released when you start arguing with what is, that energy becomes available for something else, for genuine movement, for the kind of effortless action that Wu Wei was always pointing at. He said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. What if you didn't? What if trusting the universe completely, not as a belief, but as a practice, moment by moment, was actually available to you today? As I sit with this teaching on trusting the universe, I want to share something personal that feels directly connected to everything Watts was pointing at. After more than 25 years in corporate leadership, I recently made the decision to leave my career. Not for another job, not for a better opportunity, simply because it no longer fulfills me spiritually, and I could no longer ignore that truth. What's next involves some volunteering with organizations that speak to my heart, and beyond that, I'm genuinely open to whatever unfolds. A new direction, a new chapter, or simply the gift of time and presence. I don't know yet. And for the first time in a long time, I'm okay with not knowing. It feels freeing, it feels alive. And yes, there is real fear and trepidation underneath it. The very human question of, do I have enough? Will I be okay? Has been sitting with me. I won't pretend otherwise. But I finally found the courage to walk into that fear rather than away from it. To trust myself to the water, as Watts would say, rather than keep gripping the edge of the pool. Time will tell how things turn and bend. But the leap has been taken. Today's invitation is this. Find one place in your life right now where you are fighting the current, where you are rowing against a wind that perhaps was never your enemy. And just for today, don't try to fix it. Don't try to change it. Just ask the question Watts was always really asking. What would it feel like to trust this? You don't have to have the answer. The asking itself is the beginning of the trust. Thank you for spending time with me here on Ascend and Awaken. Where do you find it hardest to trust and let go? Share in the comments. I read every one, and I would love to know. If Ascend and Awaken supports your journey, consider subscribing for more reflections on timeless wisdom, spiritual awakening, and inner peace. And until next time, peace, love, and light to you on your spiritual journey.